So I was looking at a little bit of Icy Veins and just to find out more stuff about Battle for Azeroth, and I found an interview with Alex Afrasiabi, I don't know how to say that name, and Ian Hazakostas, and they have a bunch of bullet points there. There's a lot of interesting stuff, and I have hopefully I'll remember to have a link or an image of the bullet points in the video for you guys to check out. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out. And a lot of it we talked about before with Titan Forging, legendary stuff like that, allied races. But the one that kind of I was really just waiting for Blizzard to say something about. When I made my video about PvP, I included Warfronts as one of the options for PvP, and I can't really go back and edit that part out in the video. I wish you could on YouTube and just go edit that out and say just hey, not actually a PvP part. And YouTube does have those tools, and they just don't have it available for any of the content creators, but they do have those tools, as YouTube have been able to use those tools themselves to change videos mid viewing and edit them. Anyway, PvP and Warfronts. Warfronts stated is not a PvP element of the expansion. They said it's a PvE experience. The main goal is to bring a good old feeling of faction warfare and RTS into the game. So think like when people played Warcraft 3, or if you played StarCraft in the past, it's a RTS style. You would build a base, you would have a resource to mine, like the gold mine and the woods around the base. You would have peons bring it to lumber mill as you would mass yourself some units, maybe a hero and a couple of let's say a couple of soldiers, just troops, sword and board. Maybe a few gunners, maybe a cavalry of knights and a catapult or some sort, or a siege engine, I guess, on the human side. And I guess that's what they're trying to do. When you have an expansion for Horde versus Alliance as the main key point, my thoughts were, and maybe that's just my fault here, my thoughts were we're gonna have a PvP expansion. I mean, Horde versus Alliance, how can you make PvE content out of it? I mean, are they gonna make a raid where in the end it's going to be the other faction's leader or a boss or something? I mean, that would just be silly. But for PvP, that feels so good. I mean, that would just be so appropriate. And I also saw that they were doing some of the mix of PvE and PvP content, like the islands, and the fact that we'll be going to islands, visiting them to get Azurite and such. And some of the different, I guess, difficulties to have for those, which will be kind of like the new PvE content. You'll have the normal, mythic plus, so it can scale in difficulty with the, I guess, the AI that they're trying to introduce into the game for people that do PvE, and then a PvP version, so you can do player versus player. And I thought to myself, wow, not only will we have battlegrounds and arenas to do as players that do PvP, not only will we be able to enable world PvP and be put in a world PvP server and such, we'll also be able to do these islands in PvP fashion, so PvPers can continue to PvP no matter what you do. And my thoughts were with Warfronts, I mean, it's Alliance versus Horde, it's supposed to be big siege equipment left and right. We already have siege equipment in some of the battlegrounds that we have in the game. So my thoughts instantaneously were, yes, you're going to be able to, or should be able to, use Warfronts for PvP. Imagine 20 versus 20, building up bases, right? You build up massive bases to fight each other, and then you siege those bases. You take away each other's resources. You can even imagine some of the other games that have done something similar to this, like Guild Wars 2 and ESO. Both of those games have done massive world PvP style zones where you would really just do it like a server versus server versus server, or faction versus faction versus faction, depending on which game you're looking at. And they would have massive sieges of castles. You would need to go and control points, like maybe a lumber mill of some sort, or some sort of a gold mine style of control point. And you would take control of different bases, and you would have to siege the gates and have players run in and players take over a point and hold it for a set amount of time before it's your own, and then you can zerg each other. My thoughts were it's going to be a PvP experience, but it isn't, apparently. So I don't really know why it isn't. Maybe I'm the only one who's a bit dense here, and I just don't see how this would be bad, maybe. I guess maybe Blizzard just does not want to do an Asheron 2.0, because Asheron did have some of those like zergy elements with like this League of Legends 1 lane thing and like side objectives you can do, which really did just not pan out well. It was like a mix of PvE and PvP, where there was just not enough of a PvP incentive, and it just emphasized zerging and emphasized overpowering the enemy instead of having actual PvP combat or world PvP style of experience. So I guess I feel a little bit sad that this isn't a PvP experience, because I thought Warfronts in PvP 20 vs 20 would be great. 20 vs 20 compared to 20 players versus NPCs is a little bit more laggy, so maybe they're just hoping to prevent less lag, or it could be one of those things where Blizzard just does not want to copy other games. It's been brought up as a point in the past that the reasons we had garrisons and the reasons there weren't actual player homes like some of the other games have done is because Blizzard just does not want to do what other games have done. Like, they like to take their own spin, like Team Fortress. Here comes Overwatch. League of Legends, here comes Heroes of the Storm. But they don't want to take something like a guild house or a player home and apply that into their own game. And they would rather have, at least that's what people have been speculating, is they want to make it their own in one way or another. And if they can't make it their own in some specific way, then there's just no point of doing it how everybody else is and just copying, I guess, everybody else in their ideas. And I guess I understand that aspect, but to me it just sounds so weird. You know, not only do you have an expansion that's all about faction combat, which just says and screams out loud PvP, not only do they want to update PvP a little bit and make it a little bit more unique, not only are they adding a combination to be able to play within PvP or PvE, whether it's world quests, and they're really trying to emphasize PvP aspect if you so choose to play that way, or those island expeditions even allow you to play PvP if you want to so choose to play that way. I really do hope the Warfronts and the idea for Warfronts does change to PvP. I guess we won't really know what Warfronts are really like until we get into the beta and see how people actually get to play Warfronts. But my thought process is, it sounds so, I guess, silly to have Warfronts, which is faction versus faction type of content, to end up being something that is just merely PvE. Maybe I have it kind of wrong. Maybe I just don't get the whole idea. Maybe it's a lot more complicated than it looks. But for me, to have something that's called faction combat, to be diluted to something as simple as just 20 players versus a bunch of mindless NPCs, I mean, that just doesn't sound exciting to me at all. And Blizzard did say that they have some advanced UI that they're trying to, I guess, incorporate into the game. And they're trying to get some advanced UI to, I guess, function and play a bit differently than your average AI. But so far we haven't seen what the advanced AI looks like. So the only thing I can go off of is whatever AI we've seen in the past. And the only thing we've seen in Legion so far is maybe the, I would guess, the Honor, the PvP world quest, where you would just go and you would just fight some mobs that hit you in a PvE fashion, just like every other mob, and they might have like some heal that you gotta kick with your low level or low item level, I guess, and you don't have enough stats to kind of like one-shot things. But I'm at a point with my gear where I'm just one-shotting things left and right, and not only it feels challenging, you don't really have a need to fight other players. And even the big ones where you can do, I guess, the world PvP against people of your own faction, I just feel like the rewards are just not high enough, so we just don't see any players there either. So even in the end, even in those areas, I end up just fighting a bunch of NPCs because I try to look for some world PvP from time to time and I can just barely ever find it. Again, I'm a little bit saddened by the, I guess, the Warfronts being a PvE experience. Maybe it'll make sense once we get to see some of the beta of the game. We get to see what Warfronts look like and how they will really play out. Then I guess, you know, we'll come back to the topic. But so far, I'm a little bit sad by this story. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on Warfronts. And would you want it to be a PvP experience, or at least have an option for it to be a PvP experience, as they have an option for the islands to be a PvE experience with a Mythic Plus progression system, or a PvP experience, just purely PvP. Again, let me know all that in the comments below. Thank you guys so much. I'm a little bit saddened by this story, but I guess we'll see how it turns out in the future. Again, thanks for watching. I'll see all of you in the next one.